back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. I'm here in the studio. Stephen's joining us, aren't you, my dear, from home, which is great. Are you there? There you are. Yes, hello. And we're also joined by Ella Whelan and Charlie Rowley because we're going to look through the papers.
Oh, where's Charlie gone?
Oh, he's a plant at the moment, and now we've got two of Ellie.
Ellas.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there he is. There you go.
Right.
It's a result, Charlie. All right, shall we kick off with... let's talk strike action. It seems like our camera went on strike for Charlie a second ago. Ella, what's the Times having to say?
So there has been for a while talks of a general strike, comparisons with previous years, and it's important to note that we are nowhere near the levels seen in the Thatcher years of strike action. However, there is discussions, within the TUC among people like Mick Lynch, the RMT, about coordinating strike action, and the Times picks up on the fact that there is plans to escalate that sort of action, that the Royal College of Nursing is looking at escalating their action, the strikes that they're taking in mid to late January. They're saying in the paper that they're going to be much more tough on the kind of provision of services that they offer throughout that strike period. And it's interesting to note that the laws were tightened up around strike action and the possibility of the TUC to call a general strike under the Thatcher years. But what Thatcher did was she banned sympathy strikes, which is when you basically in solidarity call a strike across industries. What she didn't do, and what is still possible, is to coordinate strike action, so to set strikes in different industries on the same time and the same day. So it remains to be seen what the TUC will decide to do, but there are sounds and noises coming from the leaders of those industries and those trade unions that it is a possibility in the new year. And, I think as much as people would... I think there's been criticism of the kind of disruption. If the government and bosses are still refusing to negotiate, there's only two options left for strikers. One is give up, and the other is to escalate and coordinate. And I think most people wouldn't want workers who are hard-pressed at the moment to give up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The consequence is more strike action and worse strike action and more coordinated strike action.
Mm-hmm.
Bleak, isn't it? Charlie, you've been looking at the COVID testing of people flying in from China to England and the motivation for it.
That's right, and it's page 2 of the Daily Mail. It says testing for arrivals from China aimed at pressuring Beijing. It is an interesting story. I think it is the right move, as it happens, by the government to test people that are coming in from China before they arrive in the UK. COVID is something that over the last 2 years everybody made sacrifices and doesn't want to see again. So I think taking precautions from arrivals from a country where they have abandoned their COVID zero policy, and there have been an increase in cases, particularly in China. Now, medics in this country, in the UK, will say, well, given the success of the vaccine rollout, we are very, very well protected. It actually isn't going to make much of a difference if there are people that do have COVID that come into the UK. I think that is a regretful thing to say, because I think it just prevents any other restrictions that might come into the future. I don't think there's any harm testing people that are coming in from a country where there is a high prevalence of COVID. I think it is the right thing to do, but obviously it is being seen as a political move rather than one that has any bearing on the medical impact of
political, because we feel that China just isn't sharing the information enough, because we know there's a surge of COVID cases in China. Could be because they've eased restrictions, but some people say it could be because there's a new variant out.
Exactly, and I think because of the lack of, at times, communication and information sharing from China, it's a move that the government has clearly decided to take in line with America, the United States, with Japan, Malaysia and India, who are also testing arrivals from China. So I think it is the good thing to do. Obviously, people say, well, this is just a step in the direction for having more lockdown, more restrictions, more testing that we don't need, because everybody wants to see the back of COVID. But I think as a precautionary measure to prevent any other kind of lockdown or any other kind of restrictions coming into play, I think it's the right thing to do.
Well, you have to, it's important to say that, thank God, China removed its zero COVID policy, because it was, in the business of locking people up and letting them die in their homes in some cases, an incredibly authoritarian measure that with shocking consequences. I think I take your point about nobody wants to be sort of daft and reckless with safety, but the institution of these kind of policies is political in itself, because we for the last few years have been talking about the need to live with the prospect of the virus, to be able to have the kind of precautions that are sensible but not restrictive on people's civil liberties. And even though it sounds small, testing people at airports, it is still an infringement on civil liberties and the freedom to travel and things like that do have knock-on effects. So I think we should be wary and remember that our government in the not too distant past took extremely authoritarian measures against its citizens, and we shouldn't let that kind of action creep back in little by little. So it's something to keep an eye on, I think.
Well, it's an interesting one. Now, Ella, why is this story on The Observer really irritating me? As someone who has been, it's bizarre, as someone who's been a very strict vegetarian for 43 years, even so, this whole idea of veganuary and the idea that people should be encouraged into something that they wouldn't normally do really gets my goat, and I don't know why.
Yeah, but that's because you're not fashionable anymore, Stephen. Vegetarians are old hat. If you want to be on trend, it's vegan is what you have to be. You've got to ditch those eggs and ditch that cheese. So it's the reason it's in the paper is that it's the 10th year of veganuary, which is kind of interesting. It makes me feel old. I feel like it's only the other day. And it's the couple that set it up are talking about the fact of the success of it, that actually when they started it in 2014, there was about 150,000 people that took part. Now there's about 6 million people. I'm caveating this with the huge note that the number of cattle and pigs and sheep slaughtered in the UK is pretty much exactly the same as it was in 2001. Those of us who have just spent the last 2 weeks enjoying pigs in blankets and turkey and all the rest of it will know that this is still a relatively, minor trend. And never mind vegetarian diets, vegan diets are still a very, 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 very small section of the population. But it's just interesting to note how this thing cooked up by a couple in their bedroom, in their kitchen, after doing Movember, the husband in the couple grew his moustache, and then they sort of enterprisingly said, well, how can we get some attention for vegans in the new year? A bit like New Year's resolutions and all that kind of thing. I think most people end up sliding back to the cheese toasty by the middle of January, and I don't judge them for doing that.
But the major supermarket, it's easy to get vegan food now.
Yes.
It didn't used to be. It used to be really difficult. Now it's there.
That is interesting that it used to be that 4 to 7% of new food products in supermarkets would be non-meat products or fake meat products, or that kind of, the fake bacon and stuff like that. Now it's about 12%. So there is something. People talk about the green pound. There is something in the vegan pound, with Greggs and the vegan sausage roll and all that kind of stuff, that it is becoming a bit more of a trend. Whether or not it's actually tasty is still up for debate, I think.
Oh, it can be made tasty, can't it?
Yeah, well, vegetables can be made tasty, but I think all of that sort of fake stuff, I think I've never found it that nice.
No, you don't have to go fake to be vegetarian.
Vegetarian's fine.
Can I just say about making things tasty, and this is one out there, GBViews at GBNEWS.uk. Who puts fruit in trifle?
Me.
Oh, that's just weird. Can't understand that in my family. Fruit in trifle.
Booze.
I thought you do put fruit in trifle. Is that?
Do you just put it on the top, Stephen? Is that what it is?
No fruit in trifle. No, you don't want to ruin the taste of a trifle by putting fruit in it.
Just
anyway, GBNews at GBNews.uk.
Don't you put the fruit
I thought you might say that, Charlie.
Don't you put the fruit in the sort of jelly bit?
Yeah, a can of tinned fruit. Pineapples and satsumas and things.
Yeah, you do in the jelly bit. Because a trifle is usually jelly at the bottom.
So you've got sponge or cake, jelly, custard.
Custard, cream,
None of that.
more fruit.
And raspberries on the top.
No.
Oh, you'll get scurvy, Stephen.
I'm really shocked.
I don't care.
All right, yes, this is a brilliant one for GB Views. Please
Good one.
have your say on what you put in a trifle, because I would have thought fruit was entirely acceptable. Rather nice. Charlie, the Red Wall. How are they propping it up?
Yes, well, it's going back to politics for a second. We talked about in the first hour just what the government may be bringing forward in the new year to try and galvanise its support base and ensure that it can go on to win the next general election, whether that's new anti-strike laws coming into place or tackling migration or dealing with the NHS. But it's an interesting poll that's been conducted by MRP poll of 10,000 people, excuse me, which has highlighted that almost a third of voters, in particular Red Wall seats, are actually undecided. Now that can blow things wide open in terms when it comes to an election if you've got a third of people that are undecided. And out of that third, 85% of people are categorised as being what would be a traditional Tory voters. So it's recognising in this particular piece that in 2019, back in 2019, that it was a general election where a number of people in seats that hadn't voted Conservative before only lent their vote to the Conservative Party. So it's making sure that in those Red Wall seats in particular, what are the policies that are going to bring those current undecided voters back on side with the Conservative Party to ensure that actually it holds on to a number of those seats.
Yes, that's
which will be crucial.
A major crucial, yes. That's the thing that's going to come up in the next year. They're going to be working really hard at that Red Wall. We've got to leave the papers there. Thank you very much. You'll be back. Yes, jolly good.